I think for over a year, just every day I would wake up and this awful twisting snake was wrapped around my whole body. I never felt ready to get rid of it because I almost used it as this guilt. If I stop feeling guilty, then I'll stop punishing myself, and I don't think I deserve to stop punishing myself. It was this weird cycle. And being in this space where judgment didn't exist and all I had to do was be, it was just such a relief. I could just breathe.
Lauren Jones, welcome, and thank you so much for joining Jo and I.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
Lauren, what's one moment in your life that changed everything for you?
I immediately came up with one single answer, one single event, which basically threw a spanner spanner in the works and changed my entire life within about 30 minutes. It was when I was in year 12. So it was my final year of high school. Oh my goodness. It was a big tidal wave that I couldn't have expected. I was about 17 and I was on the oval at my high school. I saw my previous best friend walking down the hill to meet me. I was playing basketball and she asked me to come over with her to have a chat. And the chat, I don't know how long it lasted. It felt like it lasted for 2 hours, but it probably only lasted for 15 minutes. It just flipped my entire life, my entire sense of self-knowledge and confidence, everything that I thought I knew about myself totally on its head. Basically, she was confronting me, saying that I was a bad person and a bad friend. I had known in the lead up that to this conversation, there was a weird vibe between me and her and the rest of the friendship group. So the friendship group at the time had been about 10 people. I had thought, well, I've done nothing wrong. If they want to act like that, that's fine. In the midst of this conversation that she had with me, she was pulling out events and stories from the previous 6 months that had been twisted in such a way that I couldn't even anticipate and had never seen those events in that sort of way that she was framing it. And they were all framed to sort of present me as quite the villain. As a result, that led me on a probably 3 to 4 year journey of total self-loathing, anxiety, depression. It was mammoth. It was huge. Made me just question everything that I thought that I knew about myself, my morals, who I thought I was as a person, and I had to build myself back up from ground zero, quite literally.
Lauren, I can't even imagine the shock you would have experienced when that conversation started.
Completely. It was a huge shock because before then we were best friends. I told her everything. So as you can imagine, like all of my deepest, darkest secrets, my passions, my dreams. And I found out over time that while I had been telling her all of this, she had actually at the same time been relaying all of that to the people in the group that I didn't realize. Apparently, I only found this out a couple of weeks ago that she had actually recorded me and filmed me talking to her about this stuff and shown that to the people in that group. It was a massive shock because I trusted her so deeply. My friendship with her and with all of my best friends had been like the most important relationships in my life. So to have that betrayal of trust was awful.
Oh,
to say the least.
huge. Lauren, you said earlier that you went into a space of years or a few years of self-loathing and not really caring about yourself. What triggered that? Not so much from what she said to you, but within yourself. Why did you all of a sudden go to that space of, I'm not okay?
Wow, that's a really good question. I think ever since I was little, I've always had this intrinsic sense that I'm a good person, this intrinsic sense of self-worth. And throughout high school, I went through the COVID years. So in year 10, COVID hit and I became quite depressed. It hit me quite hard. didn't have as many friends, lost contact with a lot of people. I think at that point I was only talking to 2 people, and not even on a daily basis. I think I became quite socially anxious and awkward. And so I think I was already in this very vulnerable state. And I had only become friends with this particular girl quite recently. So once I met her, I felt quite saved. I was like, oh wow, maybe I really am a good person, and maybe I really am worth a lot, because she was so good at making me feel really worthy. So to have her turn her back against all of that validation lost immediately, I was really confronted with this idea of, wow, maybe I am a terrible person. Yeah, because I think I've always thrown myself into my friendships. For me, I had always used my best friend as the mirror for my own worth. And I had to really interrogate after all of this ended whether I thought I was a good person, which I'd never really had to do before. And I wasn't sure. I didn't know.
So talk us through that, Lauren. What did you do to look for internally that self-worth?
Oh, this has been the whole shebang for the past 3 years or 4 years, really. In terms of trying to figure out whether I'm a good person, I didn't really even start on that journey for at least a year after this all occurred, because it was year 12. I was in survival mode. I was really just trying to get through, and working on myself was something to do later. In the meantime, I was just throwing myself totally into study. So I got really good scores, which was great, but only because I just was trying to consume my own time. But the process of rebuilding myself was the most mammoth journey I've ever had to go through. I'm so grateful for it in many ways, because it's taught me a lot about how people operate, what people can be going through without you realizing. I've learned a lot about myself, but it occurred on different events within the following 3 years, all built up very, very gradually to a place where I'm good now, I'm happy now, but it's taken all of this time. So there's been no one specific answer or event, but one of the first times that I think I broke through like a certain glass was when I went on a little trip to Inverloch, so by the beach, and I went by myself in a little caravan that my grandparents owned, and I just needed to get away for about a week. And so it was just me and the ocean. And as cringy as it sounds, it was such a spiritual moment for me. It became this dialogue between me and nature. And before then, I'd never really had anything like spirituality wasn't really on my radar in any way. I began to see myself as part of the world and a part of this beautiful land that we live on, and all of this very woo-woo stuff. But it really helped to make me feel like, even if I'm not accepted by society or by these girls from my high school, I will always be a part and welcomed by the land, which is, yeah, kind of crazy, but it was this first little step towards self-acceptance, which is wonderful.
Okay, Lauren, are you willing to share with us what that first step felt like? You don't have to tell us a conversation you had with nature, but give us some insight.
Yeah, absolutely. It felt like a huge relief, because up until this point, I think guilt was the primary emotion that I had been feeling for over a year. Just every day I would wake up and this awful twisting snake was just wrapped around my whole body. And I never felt ready to get rid of it. If I stop feeling guilty, then I'll stop punishing myself. And I don't think I deserve to stop punishing myself. It was this weird cycle. Being in this space where judgment didn't exist, and all I had to do was be and exist. It was just such a relief. I could just breathe, and I didn't have to prove anything to anyone, and I didn't have to try to be anything towards people. Really, the only people that I interacted with during those days were the people from the IGA supermarket. So it was really just me and the ocean, and I went for swims and let myself just be an actual human animal for a few days. And that was so just freeing.
Wow. And how long did that last, Lauren? So when you came back from that that experience, were you able to still have that feeling of non-judgment and not feeling judged?
No is the short answer. I think it helped in a way. It provided us a little anchor. I think after then I started to go on walks in the morning, and I would just look up at the sky and remind myself I'm still just on planet Earth instead of in this very overwhelming society with people and cars and that kind of thing. But yeah, the short answer was definitely not. I was riddled with fear of judgment and rejection for a really, really long time. My year 12 experience happened in year 2022, and it hasn't really been until probably midway through last year 2025 that I started to feel I could interact with people in a normal way. So it's taken me a really long time. But yeah.
So, Lauren, after that first breakthrough moment down at Inverloch, where you felt part of something, in my words, bigger than yourself, but connected with that bigness, what was the next step for you? Obviously, you came back to Melbourne, did manage to reconnect with nature, but there was still that guilt, that fear of judgment. What was your next step? How did you then take the next path?
That's a good question. There are a lot of different little things. I think first was I was at the time trying to find a really good psychologist. It was very necessary. And that took me actually a long time. I went through, I think, 3 different psychologists before I found one who properly worked, and that happened in 2024. So essentially, my final psychologist, he has been really fantastic, and all of the ones before then were really lovely. But I think I came to them in such a time of like I was not going so well, obviously, for a long time, and I think I really lost a fair bit of hope actually going to these people who weren't quite right, and because I wasn't getting better. There was one particular psychologist I was seeing, we had 12 sessions together at least, and it took all 12 of those sessions for her to actually come back to me. I'm so grateful that she did. She said, I don't think that you're actually getting any better with me. I might need to move you on to someone else. Actually hearing that from her was really helpful, because it made me think, yeah, it's actually not my fault that I'm not feeling better, that things aren't getting easier for me. It was quite easy for me to blame myself for being so depressed a lot of the time. And finally finding that the fifth time lucky psychologist was really I was very grateful. And even then, that took a long time to find proper breakthroughs, but something just felt different and better when I got him.
How did you know, Lauren, that he was your person?
I think there was something that I was looking for from all of the psychologists before him that I just wasn't finding. I found a lot of the psychologists would ask me, well, one of my psychologists was asking me very probing questions, which was what some of them are supposed to do. That's the style. I thought at the time, well, if they keep on asking me all of these questions, then surely at some point I'll come to a breakthrough. But I would leave those feeling so heavy, and that can happen, but it was every time. And so I stopped going to her for a while. And then the second one I went to, and all she would give me was tips. She didn't really listen and interrogate my experiences. And finally, this last psychologist that I found, him, the right one, he asked me the right questions that were actually getting to the heart of the things that I was feeling and thinking, and interrogating them. And it just felt like he was listening in a way that I hadn't found with the other psychologists. In some ways, I'm grateful that I did assist with those original psychologists for a few sessions at least, because you don't really know just from the first or the second. I think by the third, if you're feeling like they're not properly listening, they're not asking the questions that's getting you particularly anywhere, that's kind of how you know that it's not right for you. In the meantime, I was working a few different jobs, just trying to keep myself occupied. I actually got together with my then partner, so my ex-boyfriend now, and I think that helped to provide a bit of light. I needed someone at that point to show me that I was worthy of their time and in some way desirable as a person to be spending their time with. But it wasn't until a year later where I had the opportunity to go to this really random leadership conference. They called it a leadership conference, but it was more like a school camp full of people who didn't know each other. So at I think 2023, so the year after high school, I had been volunteering in a Rotary op shop, and I was invited or sponsored to go to this event called Ryla, which I actually don't know what it stands for. It's the leadership thing. And it's a camp that lasts for about 9 days. And I was surrounded by completely different characters, completely different people, most of whom had never seen each other before. It was all about self-improvement, but also just a bit of a community where everyone was encouraged to step out of their comfort zone, do performances at night, go onto the giant swing during the day. My second breakthrough during that time was, I mean, it appears pretty obvious right now, but the greatest epiphanies are the ones that are actually quite obvious, but you have to actually experience it to figure it out, was this idea that everyone has, like, literally everyone has flaws and everyone has strengths. And that this idea of a social hierarchy that existed in high school doesn't exist in the real world. And man, that was huge for me, because I had really internalized this idea that I was not worthy, not anything special in high school. I didn't have much social power at all. And I really thought that that made me a really boring person, I suppose. And so just being lifted up by all of these incredible people who all just seemed to be on a level playing field, I needed to learn that. And I made some good friends out of it, which was great too.
Was there an actual moment, Lauren, where it clicked for you when you were with that group of people?
I think there were a couple of little ones. I think at the time I had been carrying around this story that I had told you at the beginning of this podcast, for a long time, and I hadn't really told many people about it because I felt so much shame. At this conference, they would have little meetings, and they had group leaders. At one point, I had a breakdown, and I pulled aside one of these group leaders who I trusted, and just told them everything about it. Man, just the support from them and the group. I also ended up telling the group, and then once the ball was rolling, I couldn't stop. After I spilt all of this, the story of my guilt to them was, wow, I'm not a monster. And I ended up making a really good friend there who I'm still friends with to this day, who had a similar experience in high school. And hearing that and hearing that I'm not the only one was so helpful. I was just thinking about this earlier today, that I think all of my friends pretty much nowadays all of them had a terrible time in high school. That foundation, that bonding experience has made me really, really good friends now. I think I since then, subconsciously, I've been gravitating towards people in my life who have also gone through hard stuff because they get it and they accept me in spite of it and that kind of thing. It's really special. So.
Absolutely.
So
I've got two questions that I'm keen to ask you. The first one was, on reflection, how important was that for you to share your journey finally with other people? And the second question is, how did you have the courage to do it?
Oh, um, oh man, it was so important. It was ridiculously important. In the past few years, I've been doing a lot of, like, as you can imagine, a lot of self-help related things. And one of the books that that I read a little while back was a book about shame written by Brené Brown, which I'm sure you've heard of. And she talked a little bit about the importance of telling people your story of shame. And it was something that I didn't let myself do for a really, really long time. Because to begin with, the friend during that confrontation basically told me that if I gossiped about it, then I would be even considered even worse of a person at the time. So I committed myself to not telling anyone, really. I told one person and I didn't tell anyone else for another year. And I had to hold all of that. And that was, it was awful. While I was holding that, just reinforcing to myself that my story wasn't worth anything and that people wouldn't want to listen to me. And as a result, telling myself that for a year or more, it's something that became really deep rooted and really hard to take out. So telling people took a lot of courage, but I think also a lot of desperation. At that point, it had been riddling me with so much for, I think that was 2 years at that point before I went to Ryla. And it wasn't an instant fix. I still struggled with it for a really long time afterwards, but it was just another glass pane that I managed to shatter. From then on, I started to tell more people. But the last thing that I wanted at the time was to be considered self-obsessed. And looking back now, I'm like, no, that wouldn't have been self-obsessive at all to share your story like. But at the time, that's what I was telling myself. People don't want to listen to this. If I make it all about me, then that's also a bad person trait. So anyways, I overdeeped it. I think I overthunk it.
You were set up in some ways, so Lauren, in the sense that your friend said to you, if you say anything to anyone, that even makes you worse. So here you are, you were confronted with this conversation about how you weren't a good friend and all of the things that they thought you did wrong. And then to top it off, they said to you, and if you say anything to anyone, that makes you worse.
Yeah, it's so true. I'm very grateful now, like, I've got that perspective. You're completely right. But yeah, at the time, it was just so deep in my thoughts that I couldn't pull it out. Just too much guilt.
And I'm curious about shame, Lauren, because shame is a really big one. And as you say, and as Anne mentioned, you know, someone had told you that not only that you weren't a good person, but you couldn't tell anyone. Where was the shame sitting for you in your body before it began to release its hold, and where shame sat and where it moved?
Oh man, it was such a bodily experience. You're completely right. It mostly sat in my stomach. It felt like this empty hole, but also very heavy. It's bizarre. I think also in my chest a bit, even to the point at that time of my life, I had the worst posture in the world. I had to go to the osteo quite a few times, just literally straighten me out. Now releasing that, it's like I'm levitating a lot of the time. It's really bizarre. There wasn't really a particular moment that, well, actually, there kind of was. I'll skip forward in time a little bit now. Last year was the best year of my life. So 3 years on, I think I flew. I ended up breaking up with my boyfriend. He helped out a lot with a lot of this journey, but in the end, it kind of held me back a fair bit from properly like finding my place and being independent, which became really, really important. And after I did that, I this is going to sound so bizarre, but I met up with my now best friend, and he and I started to go to swing dancing lessons together. We do this every Thursday now. And the first time we went, it was this moment of absolute, unfiltered joy. It was as if a switch had been flicked. And I just started to go off. I don't think I really felt that shame again after that point. I had also before this gone on a solo trip through my university to Rome, which I've ended up doing another time as well. And that also helped. That provided a lot of excitement and joy, but I was still holding this in after my breakup. And after I started like weekly joy just for me, I haven't been the same since. It's been amazing. Yeah.
So tell me about that sense of what the swing dancing actually gives you. I know the feeling is joy. What does it do in your body?
Well, it's funny. I've been talking about this with one of my other friends recently. Dance has always been something that I've come back to, but I remember, and I forgot about this until recently, when I was in year 12, during all of this terrible time, I would come back home and I would close every door that I could between me and the outside world. And I'd put on my headphones and I would just dance. I would dance to AC/DC. I would rock out. And it was just some sort of really bizarre relief and connection back to just me. Nothing else exists. There's something in moving your body. Like people say exercise all the time. I found running actually did not help. I would get caught up in my thoughts even more and it would make me feel really awful. But there's no right or wrong in dance. I think I always naturally could dance, which I'm very grateful for. Doing swing dancing, particularly with someone else as well, that connection was really important to me, and it is now as well. That friend is really important to me. Dancing together, it's this moment of relief. I don't know how else to describe it. Yeah, it's a real release.
Release of any emotion? Is that what you're feeling? Like vanishes?
Yeah, in a way, but also it's less getting rid of any feelings and more this pop of creativity, I suppose. It really fills my life rather than detracting anything else from it. In year 12, that was the role that it played. But now I think I am in a place where I'm truly just trying to celebrate how awesome life can be. There's no better way to do that than dance, in my opinion. It's useless. It provides no actual service to the world other than just to have fun. And I love that. I think that is awesome.
Sounds like a great formula.
Yeah, it really is. And the weekly aspect of it is so good. It's just something that where if you're having a bad week, you can always just go out and dance every Thursday night and have a good time.
So isn't it interesting, Lauren, that Lauren in year 12 shut all the doors, headphones on, you still use dance, you were drawn to dance, whereas now you've given yourself permission to do that? Is that sort of the difference?
Permission is so the word. A lot of this whole story has to do with giving myself permission to feel joy. People who have had depression in their lives know that the fear of giving themselves permission to be happy, it's almost this bizarre experience of not feeling like you deserve to feel happy because of some certain reasons, that if you ignore that reason and do feel happy for a certain amount of time, you should be punished for it. That's what was going around in my head. And therapy ultimately actually unlocked that from me, which is why I'm such a huge advocate for it. It was so important that I went to see my psychologist and I finally broke through that. And since then, all my life has been about trying to really embrace that permission that I've given to myself to be happy. And that's been my whole philosophy since then, has just been to try to find the joy. And I've been loving it.
So, Lauren, the Lauren of, let's look at year 12, post that day on the oval at 17, but the Lauren and the way you felt then and the Lauren of today, what are the biggest differences in you from your perspective?
Oh my God. I think I give myself so much more grace. I think I was at that time so tightly wound in this idea of I have to be perfect and I have to be behave right and say the right things and not be awkward and I have to be funny and I have to be enthusiastic. And nowadays, if I have a shit day or if I am awkward in a social situation, I am able now to give myself a lot more grace and compassion than I used to because I know that that is perfectly normal. I thought it was just a me thing, that I wasn't perfect, and I had no compassion for that at the time. That is a huge thing. Yeah.
So tell me about the voice of grace. In Lauren's head before was about not being good enough, whereas giving yourself grace has a different voice.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny that you say that because 110%. I've always gravitated to writing. I was a big writer. I got my best scores in English in year 12. And I recently was cleaning out my room and flipping through all of these old diaries and notebooks that I had. And I just had pages and pages and pages of all of these notes that I would write to myself. And I forgot that I had done this. And I would start with, Dear Lozzie Wozzie. I would give myself the most cutest name that I could, that like my mum would give me. And I would just write all of these compassionate notes to myself to remind myself that things are going to be okay. And cultivating that voice in my writing had helped me cultivate a voice in my head as well. And it took me a long time to actually have that in there. And I obviously still struggle. I still have really bad days where I'm not very self-compassionate and I'm not very graceful to myself. That muscle slowly built and I can access it a lot easier now than I ever used to.
If that same situation happened tomorrow, your best friend pulled you aside and said some very similar things, what would the voice or what would you say to yourself now?
I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I think I would still really struggle because it still hits all of my greatest insecurities, but that voice would remind myself that I've been here before and that I got through it and that I can do that again and that I've got a lot of people around me who love me and will support me, which is really wonderful. Because at that time, after that whole breakdown, I had absolutely no one. I was so lonely for a really, really long time. I really built up my army in the past few years of support and cultivated those relationships as best that I could to, yeah, help me. That voice would really be telling myself, I can do this and I've got people who can help me and that all is not lost and the world is still beautiful, but I'm just going to have to push through.
There clearly was something deep inside of you that wanted to move through this and find a different path to get to the other side, to find the grace. Do you know what that is?
Oh man. Well, it's funny. At the time, I really thought I had absolutely no drive to make myself feel better. But you're right. in hindsight, I am so proud because I didn't let myself fully resign myself to that rabbit hole. And I think I've got a bit of a fight in me, actually. That's what it is. My dad always brings up how when I was 2 years old, there was some night that I didn't get my way. I kicked and I scraped and I punched and I did not let up. And he was like, this kid is such a pain in the ass, but God, I love this in her. It looks totally different now. I'm a much less confrontational person than I used to be when I was 2. But ultimately, I think I'm quite determined, and I just didn't let myself stay in that state. I actually knew somewhere deep down in a voice that I actually couldn't hear at the time that I could do good things.
Lauren, I just want to pick up, well, you've mentioned 2 breakthrough moments, one down at Inverloch and one at the camp. Was there any other key moments? Because you did mention that there was a number of them along the journey.
Yeah, there were quite a few. Both of my trips away to Europe. So I've been super lucky. I've gotten to go through my university to Europe literally just in 1 year. So last year, 2025, I went for 1 month in January, and then I went for about 3.5 months towards the end of the year. Both of those played huge roles in bringing me to the spot that I am now. The first was really about my realizations with my relationship at the time, was that I had more to offer to myself, and that I was capable of living my life in a far more exciting way. I really needed that boost of self-confidence, and that's what that trip got me. The second trip was far more about me just living it. I had done so much work on myself, and so I'd listened to so many podcasts and read so many books of self-help, and I would get advice from anyone who would give it to me for years and years and years and years. And finally, this trip to Rome, I could take it on board and run with it. Instead of berating myself, I just let it all go and met some really great friends and almost stopped trying and just went for it. And that was so freeing and wonderful. And since then, I've been pretty right.
You embodied everything that you'd learned. That was your unifying point, your second trip to Rome.
Yeah, exactly. That was the zenith, the very epitome of everything.
And I wonder if it was at that point, Lauren, you trusted yourself. You didn't need to turn outward to find the answers. You were able to trust yourself at that moment.
Definitely. I still have an issue of outsourcing a lot of my validation, and my friends from Rome will tell you that very quickly, that I still relied on them a lot for whenever I had insecurity. That's still definitely something that happens, that I end up doing. Even that action of asking for help from them and asking for their validation was something that I couldn't have done a year before. But yeah, that vulnerability and connection with people, it had been a huge blockage for me. And this trip, I just let go and really embraced that.
Wow. I'm interested to hear from you. What are you looking forward to now?
Well, this year I am looking forward to being a bit more driven. Last year, my entire goal was to really focus on what I just said, enjoyment, bringing as much joy into my life as I can, and embracing my friendships and making as many friends as I can in a way. This year, I've got that under my belt. I know myself. I know what is going to bring me joy and what is going to bring me that hope if dark times come. And this year is the year where I'm excited to sort of have all of that, and also be able to go onto my career journey, which is kind of bizarre. I've got one more year of uni left, and I'm excited to see where that's going to take me in the years to come, and hopefully to work hard at whatever job I'm doing this year. And that's what I'm excited about.
It sounds to me like you are an amazing human being. How old are you, Lauren, again, right now?
I'm 21.
Okay, so for 21, you have the presence of mind and the self-awareness to be able to unpack such an incredible journey. It's really incredibly inspirational to hear you talk about it. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It's been a huge time. It's been a huge few years, but I feel very grateful to be on this podcast and be able to express it all. It's been really wonderful.
Yeah, it's been so inspiring, Lauren. And given what you know now and what you've gone through, what would you tell your 10-year-old self? And would it be different to what you would tell your 17 or 18-year-old self?
I think I think it actually would be different. My 10-year-old self at the time, I was very conscious of how I was appearing to all of my peers. And I was quite a confident little thing, but I was also deeply conscious of making sure that I didn't screw up in front of all of my classmates. So I think at that point, I would tell myself to just keep cracking on and keep being myself and not care as much about my presentation and that kind of year 12 self. I am actually quite proud of how I handled that, even though it wasn't easy. In reflection, I don't think I could have done anything more. Probably the only message I would have for myself is to have that grace and that gentleness going into that year. And yeah, to try to not be so hard on myself. But I think I was doing that anyways, as much as I could at the time. So yeah.
All right. What's been the greatest gift of this experience?
Oh man. I could not be the person that I am right now without all of that. Just the self-awareness, the knowledge that I have about who I am and what brings me joy, my friends. I don't think I would have a life nearly worth living as much as I do right now without all of this struggle, which is kind of bizarre. I never would have said that while I was going through it, because I know that I went through so much, but it really taught me to stand on my own 2 feet and taught me resilience. This has been the greatest gift, is how I feel right now.
Wow, what a
Mm.
gift. And you can hear that in your journey and your story that you really have, yeah, grown to be this strong, resilient woman that we see in front of us. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that, Lauren. The final question, what are your tips for others?
Oh man. Look, I know that tips come from here, there, and everywhere. And they are not a one size fits all. And you can do the healthy diet, you can do the 10,000 steps a day, and you can do all of this and you can still feel really awful afterwards. And I just have to say that you're not wrong for feeling like that. If it doesn't work one day and you're still feeling crappy afterwards, then that's perfectly fine. It's a really gradual process to go from ground zero back to up to 100. For me, it took 4 years pretty much. That was one little thing that happened in year 12. Everyone is on their own journey, and compassion for yourself is deeply, deeply important. So yeah, that's probably what I would say. But also reaching out to other people as well. Never be afraid to talk and share your story if you feel a bit trapped in that.
Can I just say, Lauren, you raised a point that I think we need to really highlight. And that is that you said this one little thing that happened in year 12. It wasn't little and it shattered your world. I think sometimes we diminish our experiences without truly believing and recognizing the magnitude of them. So I just want to acknowledge to you that it was a huge thing, and look at the grace that you've given that process, and well done.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think actually you're completely right. I don't give myself enough credit. That was very difficult, but I really appreciate that. Thank you.
And what a gift, Lauren, that you're able to share your story with us and with others, and that the shame that once sat very heavily on you over this story has lifted and shifted enough through your strength and hard work and grace that you've given yourself, that you're able to share your story and your journey with others and inspire others and give them hope and strength and courage. So thank you so much from both of us. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on our podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, John. And you guys are such a delight. So I am so grateful. Thank you.
Okay, that's our episode for today of What's Fear Got to Do with It. Thanks so much for your company. We hope you found it insightful and it left you with some helpful tips from our guests and some great points for you to reflect on. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Substack or follow us on your favourite platform and leave a review. We'd love to know your thoughts. Maybe you'd like to be a guest, or you know someone who you would like to hear their story. Reach out to us on Insta at whatsfear_podcast or email us at info@whatsfear.com. All the guests' show notes are below. And until next time, from Jo and I, take care, stay curious, and keep the conversation going.